Characters are the most important things in a story. If they're not good enough, then no one's going to follow through. And there's a psychological science into creating characters that will grasp the audience into wanting to follow their stories. There's a big chance that you've heard of House of the Dragon, even if you haven't watched it yet. And if you've heard of George Martin, you probably know that he's a master at creating characters. So I examined his works, read Fire and Blood a few times, watched the show more than 10 times until I found the answers. This video will help you create your own unique characters with using a character profile that's designed to keep your stories interesting and dynamic. Let's dive in. How to treat the character profile. I'd say a character profile isn't a form that needs to be filled out all at once. Some parts might need to be completed before the writing process begins, like the character's name or age, but there are also elements that can be figured out during the writing process. Even near the end, maybe the character shows a dark side during a climactic conflict, and you want to add that just to have an idea of what they might be capable of. If I were to write a character profile on Daemon, especially focusing on his character at the start of the show, it would be pretty brief. It would include his brother, his niece, his sister-in-law, and that's it. His parents are dead, so are his grandparents. He also has a wife that he clearly hates. For his current state, he's in charge of the City Watch. He's also the king's heir. Personality traits: ambitious, sharp-tongued, and impulsive. We can think of other traits, but these three shape the Daemon we see in the first 2 episodes. Almost every other character can be defined in 3 brief statements. Rhaenyra is introverted, daring, and isn't afraid to tell the truth. Alicent is more reserved, shy, and lacks the courage to disagree with traditions even if they seem wrong to her. So, what happens next? We go to the next phase of their life. This new phase can include personality change and mini-arcs. I don't want to get into how this new phase is achieved since this video is about character profiles, but to give you a quick summary, major plot events can shape them. I might add this here as well. Character profiles can be unwritten and just a summary in your mind, but if you're like me and tend to forget things, it's a quick way to be reminded of where you are. Nonetheless, you don't need to write down anything that doesn't add value to your story. If the backstory doesn't matter to the present day, you can skip it. I don't think there's much backstory for House of the Dragon in case of the characters, just the fact that Viserys was chosen over Rhaenys. We don't know much about Daemon, Alicent, Otto Hightower, or any other characters except for brief pieces of info, like how Alicent had lost her mother, and there's absolutely no need to write down any backstory if it doesn't add value to your story. Here's my tip. If you have to write down that much backstory, maybe you're starting your story in a wrong time. Maybe you have to go back a little bit. What is needed in a character profile? There are things that don't change, like the name of the character, their birthplace, their parents. At the same time, we have things that constantly change, like the age of the characters. Since House of the Dragon contains multiple time skips, we actually witness a lot of changes in characters' ages. With aging comes maturity, and maturity means change in personal traits. Daemon becomes a caring father and a husband in episode 6. The same Daemon who called his ex-wife the bronze bitch. So we need to include those changes and be aware of them. With each major plot point comes a change or mini arc for the characters. In my suggested template, I've written a brief summary of the plot points and the result it has on the characters. Every time something major happens, the characters are bound to change. After Viserys marries Alicent, Rhaenyra becomes isolated and lonely. She also becomes more impulsive. She was daring even before, but now she goes out of her way to piss off her dad. So I'd say a character profile needs to always have an empty section, but the section must be very short and to the point. There's no need to ramble on about one character for 5 pages. We have descriptions for that. Basic information. This includes the character's name, last name if necessary, age at the start of chapter 1, family tree, and friends. Physical description. I say only write what has direct value and importance to the story. For example, in the Fire and Blood book, there's a description for Rhaenyra's physical appearance that makes her jealous of Alicent, particularly because she gains weight after giving birth to many kids. kids. Another major plot point is when Alicent and Rhaenyra confront each other after Aemon takes Vhagar, resulting in Aemon losing an eye. This physical description will have severe consequence throughout the story just because of one eye. And later on, we get another description when the eye is replaced with a sapphire and Aemon shows it to Lucerys before killing him. A more general example is the silver hair of the Targaryens, which is a significant element of their appearance. In House of the Dragon, hair color adds story value. When Rhaenyra gives birth to 3 dark-haired boys who look nothing like their supposed birth parents. Personality traits include 3 key elements of their personality, but if you want to dive deeper, I'd suggest 2 things they absolutely hate, 2 things they absolutely love, 3 of their strongest beliefs, 3 major flaws, their biggest goal, and their biggest motivation in life. And if we want to apply this to Alicent, 2 things she absolutely hates are being ignored and people who get away with lies. 2 things they absolutely love are her kids and protecting their name at all costs. Her strongest beliefs: the greater power that judges. Although Alicent may use religion as an excuse, she absolutely believes in the power of the gods. Evidence of this is when she and Rhaenyra, while still friends, go to the Sept of Baelor. So her other beliefs also revolve around religious and traditional values. Alicent never thought she was stealing the crown, but she convinced herself that Viserys actually meant their son to be king. It's not unbelievable, especially from her perspective, that maybe her husband wanted their son to be king. You can see her struggle in convincing herself that this is not usurping the crown. If she were this kind of person, the council members would have included her in the plan. 3 major flaws: not being able to be just when it comes to judgment, essentially leaving logic behind and depending on religion or tradition to dictate everything for her. She doesn't have a strong presence. The only time we see her taking action is during the encounter with Rhaenyra after Lucerys blinds Aemon. This flaw kind of gets fixed, which can be a mini arc for her, but in early episodes, it takes a lot of time for her to make a decision about something. The green dress scene is essentially a warning to Rhaenyra that although she's late, she finally knows the truth. Her biggest goal: to protect her children. Her biggest motivation actually comes from her father whispering that if Aegon doesn't become king, Rhaenyra will kill her and all of her children. So the motive is based on a big fear. Now, how do we put dynamics in this character sheet? If the major plot points affect the character dynamics in any way, I'd say go ahead and write them down. In House of the Dragon, almost every plot point affects Rhaenyra and Alicent's relationship. After Viserys announces their marriage, Rhaenyra feels betrayed. After fooling around with Daemon and lying about it to Alicent, the relationship breaks even further. When Alicent realizes Rhaenyra has lied, she essentially declares war on her. As for Daemon and Rhaenyra, their relationship is not just a simple negative or positive road. It's much more challenging, which drives people to like them as a couple. Let's just ignore the fact that they're niece and uncle. When Viserys announces Rhaenyra as heir, Daemon feels left out and alone. He lashes out at the Targaryens. When he comes back to King's Landing after all those years and sees his niece as a potential love interest, he makes a move, which he regrets due to her young age. They meet again after nearly a decade when Daemon loses his wife, and they decide to get married as a form of family alliance. There's a change with every plot point, and those moments stick in their memories as ways to judge one another.
You abandoned me.
I spared you. You were a child. Each of us is capable of depravity.
I believe it of you.
How to make my character grow. Now, we have important events happening which shift the story in new directions once in a while and affect how the characters view each other, so it's clear where the arcs come from. If Alicent sees Rhaenyra getting away with big issues time after time, she's going to bury an anger that isn't very like her to show, and this burial of anger will lead to something like this.
I shall have one of her son's eyes in return.
If Rhaenys Targaryen sees people underestimating women over and over again, and if she has a strong personal experience with it, she will protect someone like her when the time comes. Her right is also stolen from her, so she will feel both the envy and the wish that she had the same protection. How do I put the plot forward with my character? I think through this character profile, I've given you a glimpse of character-driven stories and how they can make wonderful narratives like Martin does. There are two kinds of plot points. The one the character has a choice in, and those choices reveal a part of their personality, and the ones the character faces and must overcome. Damon doesn't have any say in being cast away as heir, but he shows his anger and feeling of being left out by stealing the dragon egg. He has a choice when it comes to Rhaenyra, and he chooses to seduce her and take her to a brothel, whether it's out of ambition, love, or whatever the writer intended and the viewer interprets. Rhaenyra doesn't have a choice in who her father marries, but she chooses to stay away from everyone and keep herself isolated. Then again, she has a choice when it comes to having an affair, when traditions frown upon it, or better say, forbid it. What if I'm not a plotter? The character profile that I've provided for you can be applied to both plotted stories and used if you're a pantser as well. In case you're a plotter, you can just add pivotal points in the plot like the inciting incident, the midpoint, the climax, depending on the structure you're using. If you're a pantser, you have to recognize pivotal points in the story yourself. Rhaenyra's coronation as heir was definitely a big plot point. Alicent's marriage to Viserys, Daemon's affair with Rhaenyra. There are as many plot points as your story needs because there are no rules in telling you what to do at certain points of your story. Conclusion. I hope by end of this video, you'll have a better mindset about character profiles than I did when I first started to use them. Make sure to subscribe for more case studies on movies and more writing tips. Until next time, happy writing and keep dreaming.